Well, happy Tuesday, Danielle.
Hi.
Hello, and happy Tuesday, Red Leader community. Thank you for joining us for another rare conversation. Today's topic is living with intentionality. If you're watching us on YouTube, welcome. Twitter, welcome. Facebook group, welcome. There's a book by Jay Bilas called Toughness. And he said in his book, and Jay Bilas was a basketball player, by the way. And now he's an announcer on TV. I believe he was also a head coach for college ball. He said, if I could go back and be a player again, one area in which I would strive to be better would be my daily preparation. I would take more time to mentally prepare myself for practice. It would have made me a far better player if I consistently taken the extra time to mentally prepare myself and focus on what I expected to get out of that day's practice, and to mentally prepare myself to truly compete that day, from the first drill to the last. We've talked about morning routines, and we talked about, putting yourself in the right mindset to live more with more intention. There's two questions that I want to explore today. Is in terms of, like, if you're watching this today, you're taking your lunch break. Two questions to think about for the rest of the day. And we're going to have a discussion on this. Number one, in what two ways in which I will decide to improve today? And number two, what one person whose day I will make great today? So you don't have a notebook, book, grab one. Two thoughts to be living more intentionally. Two ways in which I will improve today, and one person whose day I will make great. And I tell you what, years ago, I heard this talk about, going into meetings, going into, one-on-ones with an intention and a purpose. The story went as well that there was this guy, his wife called him up and said, can you pick up our son from school today? He's like, oh, think about how long of a day he had that day and whatnot. And he wasn't excited about it whatsoever. And then she said this to him. Hey, the reason why I want you to go and pick him up today, because I know he had a lot of tough tests that he was really stressed out about. And I think it'd be helpful if he was able to have you to just share with you, can help him through it, because you know how to handle stress better. What do you think happened, Danielle, to his mindset when it came to pick up his son now?
Well, I'm sure that it changed in the sense that now he had a purpose of why he was going to be able to pick him up and help him in his day.
Yeah, and he did. Had a great conversation with him. He was so grateful for that opportunity to go ahead and have that conversation with his son. And at the end of the day, his son opened up to him a lot more than just the pressure of the tests as a teenager and going through high school. And I know the difference is made from me. I mean, I'm just like anyone else. I can get caught up in the habit of doing the routine thing over and over again, and not having the intentionality behind, meeting up with someone. When you think about those two questions, Danielle, number one, in what two ways might I improve today? And number two, whose day can I make great today? How do those two thoughts sit home with you, and how can you see that in helping you?
Well, I think it gives more purpose behind what your day is going to look like versus just going through your day. I think sometimes we get stuck in that rut of just the daily grind of everything. And this, when you put that in perspective in asking those questions, is that now you have a purpose behind your day that you can be working towards. And it helps put your intentions into action versus them just being good intents.
Tell us more about that. Good intentions versus intent.
Well, you can have all the intentions in the world, but if you're not going to take any action on them, they're just going to be great intentions. That's it. If you're not making the effort to improve, like now you're making those intentions something more tangible versus just the idea of it.
Right. I think that's so important in terms of relationships and our health or finances, whatever it may be, is like, okay, you know what? In what ways can I improve in this area today? And what, I mean, it's going back to dating. I mean, I'm going to call a spade a spade. You know, when you're dating someone, you want to like meet them for the first time. When you and I went our pseudo first date, I guess you could call it. You know, I had an intention to completely wow you. Like, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and show her how I can be Mr. Romeo, you know, and then she beats me in miniature golf. Uh, but what if we apply that more, those two questions more to our life? What else would you think would come out of it?
Well, I think then you have the opportunity to continue challenging yourself each day and growing versus just living each day and letting it pass you by.
Yeah, because time doesn't wait for anybody. And it's the only non-renewable resource we have out there. I think we talked about that last week. You know, in the morning, part of my questions I also ask myself is like before I have a meeting, especially when I do this intentionally, it's like, okay, who can I add value today to, or how can I add value to someone? And I just listen, and it's a magical how the answers come up to those questions. Because there's a saying where our focus goes is where our energy goes to. And I think we really thought of those two questions more consistently. Number one, in what two ways might I improve today and become better? And two, whose day can I add value to today and help them like have a great day? I think we get more out of life. I think you have less burnout. And also, I'd be curious what your thoughts on this. I think we have less unappreciation for people.
Explain more on what you mean.
Well, I think if we're intentional in terms of like you and I get to have our lunch date, and I have a certain intention for our lunch date. I'm not going to tell you my intention, but no, just to have quality conversation to connect deeper. I think you notice more of the good things in your life. So it leads to less unappreciation of others and things that we have in our life. That's what I mean by that.
So to take away from not taking things for granted, I guess, is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, I couldn't think of the right word. You just stole the words out of my mouth. Yeah, I mean, imagine if we're, think about with our kids. I mean, it's pretty cool because I have my goal book, my outcomes I want to get for this year, and one of them is my connection with our son Ezekiel. And it's been so cool. Like when I look at my goals and reread my book, I'm like, oh, that's happening. Oh, that's happening. Because I also think, though, if you ask yourself these questions, you're going to show up differently, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that puts in perspective, like, when you focus on that one area of your life and how you want to improve it, it doesn't necessarily just have to stop there. You can like expand that into other areas of your life, maybe connecting more with one of your coworkers or connecting more with somebody in a networking environment or something that you're not like you're taking this time, you're saying personally, like I want to build this relationship stronger, deeper with a family member, but you don't have to just stop there. It can expand into other areas of your life.
And the thing is, which is the side of that is, the flip side of that coin is that might be your intention, but it may not be the other person's intention. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes it's also important for us to communicate that intention with that other person. Sometimes I wanted to go with a surprise. But it's interesting. It was years ago. I'm in the program that I have called Power 8. And, sometimes it's about making better relationships and connections. And I feel when I've done that, it just starts to happen. There's a Harvard study I think it was Harvard that recently did this. The difference in how one word can make the difference in your results. And that word is going from should to could. I should have a better relationship here. I should do this better. I should do this better. I think sometimes you land up shooting all over yourself. But to change should to could. How could I improve a relationship? How could I improve my health? And just literally, I read that article last month, and we were in the midst of working to hit our goals for my corporate role, and we were off by $70,000. And I was like, oh, we should be like, I literally was telling myself, I was shitting on myself, that we should be hitting this goal right now. Like, this is ridiculous. We should be hitting it. And after I read that article, I said, how could we hit it? And for me, by having that better intention, it opened up a different thing. And next thing you know, I get a text message from one of my sales leaders. Tony, I have a big surprise for you tomorrow. I'm like, well, tell me now. I don't want to wait till tomorrow. And they told me, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's $70,000. So, and also when we're like stating our intentions, to be mindful of the words we use. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of it too, like, we stop ourselves from starting something because we're not good at it yet. And so I think when you throw in there yet, it changes your mindset and how you can set your intentions to work towards different goals, knowing that when you're yet working on them, you're not finished. So you find ways in which you can make that come to fruition.
That's key. Yet. I haven't had an amazing lunch date yet with you yet this week. See, we like to have fun here on this call. But what about you guys who are watching here today? How do you live with more intention in your life? Or maybe this is something you really just haven't intentionally thought of. See how I did that play on words there? But what difference could it make? You see how I snuck that one in there? If you did, though, in your relationships, in your health, in your finances, in your spiritual journey, like, how could I get closer to, and for me, it'd be to God, right? How could I improve and make a difference and better someone's life? And for me, at the end of my day, I literally will ask myself, who did I add value to today? Who did I have value to? And I tell you what, when we're chasing different goals and dreams in our lives, when we can stack up those small wins, it can add to big wins, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So as we close up, and this is a shorter call here today in regards to this, because we're intentional. We're intentional. What would you say in terms for you and your experience on, we and I had a conversation about this last night about being more intentional in people's relationships?
Well, I think it's just, you're not doing it for yourself. Once you are able to start taking your eyes off yourself, and looking at ways that you can look, like the question is, who can I add value to today, or whose day can I make great? Like, when you start looking at your life in ways in which you can serve people, I think that's when you can really start to make a difference in your world, and then those that are around you.
Well said. And so remember how to live more intentionally. Before you get to work, before you go to school, before you go to a practice or a game, or before you start making breakfast or even having that lunch date, write these two things out. Number 1, 2 ways in which I will improve today. And number 2, one person, just one, whose day I will make great today. And we appreciate you investing time to connect with us today. Remember, Rare Leader is someone who's resourceful, who's adaptable, who's resilient, and willing to engage with others. Be more intentional too. Until next week, I'm Tony Jalen, joined by the wonderful
Danielle, Jalen.
Go out and be a rare leader. Rise up, onward and upwards.